If you're convinced that your ideal, socialism, is morally virtuous, and that the opposite, capitalism, is morally vicious, then you're always, always, always going to be looking for a way to undermine the evil thing and boost up the good thing. Some people would like to say it should be illegal to sell water at an increased price during an emergency when people really need it, right? Because they need it, and it's immoral to jack up prices, right? That's price gouging. That's evil. It's unjust, and it should be illegal, is the argument. Now, there are all kinds of practical economic arguments against the outlawing of price gouging like that, quote unquote price gouging, right? There are all kinds of economic arguments as to why that's actually a good thing and beneficial in the long run. But you don't need those complicated theoretical arguments. All you need to do is ask yourself, okay, what if the water manufacturer decides to just stop selling water altogether? They still need the water, but you can't force it from him because he went out of business. What are you going to do? See, and the point is, and everybody knows this deep down, wealth, prosperity, goods are produced. They're created. They aren't just sitting out there for people to grab. It's not like the bottled water, the filtered, clean, readily available, prepackaged bottled water is just sitting out there waiting to be grabbed, and this guy was greedy and he hoarded it all, and now the government's going to come along and tell him, all right, you've got to give that away for X price. That's just a practical example of, everyone should know, I think everybody does know, the most basic principle in economics, which is that goods are produced. They're created. They're created by individual people. And if those individual people chose not to produce, the goods would not exist for you to tell the government to go and loot for you. If they don't exist, the government can't hold a gun to someone's head and tell them to give it to you because it doesn't exist. So you don't need super complex economic arguments, as valuable as they are in certain contexts. I'm just saying you don't need that. People don't need to go read Hayek and Mises in order to understand that anti-capitalist systems won't work. They won't work practically. All they need to do is step back for a split second and think about the nature of the things that they're talking about, the nature of the goods that were produced, that they're saying they've got a right to now redistribute as they please. It's so basic, it's so easy to understand. And not only that, but we've got decades of extremely exhaustive, well thought out theoretical arguments and practical arguments all combined together over the course of the last few decades that have gone virtually unopposed and absolutely undefeated, all showing that anti-capitalist systems don't work, they can't work, and that capitalism is the only system that can work. It's the only system that's tenable for human flourishing, and it's the only system that truly does help the poor. We've got all of that. We've got that huge, wonderful, glorious track record, and yet everybody hates capitalism. And yet everybody wants to dream up that maybe if you just tweak it around the edges, socialism will work. Why is that? And I would say the answer is because they are morally convinced that it's right, even if they think that it may not work out. If you're convinced that something is morally right and that the opposite is morally evil, and that's what most people believe. Most people believe that capitalism really is evil. They might even concede that it's a necessary evil because they understand that it's practically unavoidable, but they still see it as evil. If you're convinced that your ideal, socialism, is morally virtuous and that the opposite, capitalism, is morally vicious, then you're always, always, always going to be looking for a way to undermine the evil thing and boost up the good thing. And if it just so happens that the good will never be attainable on this earth, well, then we're going to do our best to get as much of it as possible, right? Okay, so sure, I concede it's practically impossible to have it in its pure form, but that doesn't mean that we can't get as close as possible, right? We're trying to strive for the ideal. Socialism is the moral ideal. We're going to try to get as close as we can to the good, even if we can't get 100% there. And they're absolutely right to think that, so long as they believe, so long as we believe, so long as the culture and the church teaches that the fundamental morality of socialism really is virtuous, and that the fundamental morality of capitalism really is vicious. So that's why the practical arguments for capitalism haven't worked, and they won't work in and of themselves, by themselves. You have to change the morality. You have to understand why socialism is not just impractical, but a gross evil. You have to understand why capitalism is not just supremely practical, but an extremely moral good, a virtuous system that everybody ought to strive for as far as we can obtain it on this earth.